Hey everyone, welcome back to this video series by Solid Shell Security, and we are talking about CPanel. In the last video we installed CPanel, and today we're going to talk about configurations for CPanel. So let's go and bring CPanel and WHM up. Before we talk about all the services and everything, we're going to go into configuring Apache. So to access Apache, we're going to go to the Software tab, Easy Apache. Easy Apache is the quick GUI interface to configure and compile Apache PHP all together, along with other things. So this is the interface here. You can do the same thing from command line interface, which is pretty easy. We'll go over that later, but it's pretty much the same concept, except it's going to use a lot less memory. It's going to be a little more responsive, and I mean it depends on which we want to do it. You can do either way. The one thing to keep in mind, anything you do in WHM can be done through the command line interface. So if you want, you can always create a bash script or any other script, Python, whatever, to actually make use of the binaries and other code that CPanel has installed and use that to automate processes and tasks. So just throwing that out there for those of you who might be wanting to know how to do that. Right now, we're going to show off Easy Apache. So, oh, and one quick thing, you can actually do your own compiling patches through Easy Apache. All you have to do is basically code the little script, put the patch in, and when you compile Apache, it's going to take your patch and go ahead and apply it. We'll go through that in a later episode, but you can actually do that. So if you're wondering if you get that type of control and power and the compiling configuration, yes you do. So you can put your own patches in. Okay, so anything you do, you can always save and build your own little templates, and then you can always use them whenever. So we're just going to go ahead and stick with the previous configuration, which is the default one, and we're going to start. Actually, let's just go ahead and click the PHP security one, and we'll build off that one. So we're going to start customizing. You can choose the Apache version. Ideally, you're going to want to always use the latest. If you have a reason to want to use like a previous edition, you can, but ideally we just stick with the latest. Same goes for PHP. If you have a reason to want to use a PHP 5.2 or a lower version, you can. If it's not listed, the one you want to do, you can always compile PHP manually through command line interface, and it's going to override the default installation, so you don't have to actually go through Easy Apache for PHP. So if you just want to compile a PHP without going through Easy Apache and compiling Apache, you can just go to the command line interface, install PHP like you normally would, download the sources, command line interface it, install. So you can do it that way if you want to be more precise. Sometimes Easy Apache will take a little bit to actually push the latest version of PHP, so if there's like a security issue that came out, you're going to have to do it through the command line interface, because sometimes CPanel can be very slow about pushing security patches. So I'm just going to throw that out there. For now, we're just going to use 5.3. It's right now the typical, most common one right now. So we're just going to stick with 5.3. Front page, there's really no reason. That's like 2003. No one really uses it. If you find someone who uses it, well, I don't see why they're using it. It's, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and put IronCube in there. Now, we'll go ahead and toss the accelerator in just for the fun of it. Some people might not want it. Some people might use it. You can easily use APC, you can use Xcache, whatever you want to use. For like shared host environments, I'm more of a fan of just using eAccelerator. Dedicate, I prefer Xcache. I personally think it's faster by using Xcache, but that's just me. So you can just do whatever you want. I'm gonna go ahead and toss in mod bandwidth and mod QoS. That's nice. Now, those who are asking about mod RUID2, it's kind of like CPHP, but not exactly. For those who don't know, mod PHP is DSO. That's PHP being compiled right into Apache pretty much. so they're running really close, and that's when the user runs as Apache. It's not running as its own user. It's faster, it uses less resources that way. However, it's less secure. Now recently mod RUID2 came out. It's basically running as like mod PHP DSO. It's running like that. The only difference is it's using less resources as well, but it's also running PHP as that user. So this is probably going to be your ideal choice if you're running a VPS or a low-ended system. Like if you don't have a lot of RAM or CPU, you're going to probably want to run mod UID2. Personally, I'm more of a fan of mod FCIGD, which I will enable. I'm going to toss in mod security just because. And okay, it's not here yet. It's going to be in the other options, which we'll talk about later. But personally, I'm more a fan of the FCGID2. The only difference is if you're going to at least need 2 gigs of RAM, guaranteed, at least 2 gigs dedicated RAM. Ideally, you're going to want 8 and 16. That's just personally from what I've seen and using a pretty active server. We've got a server right now that we've been watching and monitoring and doing some tests on, which is right now very stable. But we actually had it running without any swap being used, but now that we've got enhanced backups and other stuff running, we've noticed swap is actually being used. The thing about FCGID is it's very memory intensive. So the reason I'm bringing this up is if you're going to use the mod FastCGI, you're going to want to make sure you've got a lot of RAM. Otherwise, you're probably going to run into some issues, heavy swapping. I mean, it depends how many sites you're going to have hosted, but ideally, you're really going to want a lot of RAM if you're going to use that option. So this is the advanced for a lot of Apache options. The PHP is at the bottom, but this is all the options for Apache for more advanced. So we're going to go ahead and enable the mod FCGID since I like that one. And we're tossing deflate, disk cache, stuff like that. But the other thing here is this confuses a lot of people, the NPMs. To put this in a nutshell, the two different ones, there's basically 2 ways. You can run either threaded, which is why PHP cannot be ran as a DS, cannot be ran as mod PHP. So if you're running mod PHP, you're going to have to use npm prefork. That's just a simple fact. Now if you're running threaded, personally I prefer to use npm event. But worker, event, they're both threaded environments. Unless you're using something that is not threaded, you can typically run either one. And you're going to, the main difference here is if you're running event or worker, you're going to get a lot more performance increase with a lot less resources being used because you're not going to have to spawn as many processes. This is why we prefer to run with npm event. It's going to be a lot faster, less resources, more, so we can pack more sites onto a server. Right here is what we found. If you wanted to look it up, there's a question. We found this one on server fault, and someone was asking the question which npm to use. But now there were 2 answers, but this one was the only one that actually got rated like crazy high. But this guy goes way in depth with using all 3 of them, and there's a lot of comments, a lot of talking on the whole thing. So if you really want to get like in a nutshell, this would be a pretty good resource to read up and understand. But pretty much in a nutshell is, if you're basically going to use something that's going to break when threads are used, use this one. If you can work with threads, you're going to want to go with either worker or event. Such if you're going to be using like the latest version of Apache, which should actually be coming out in production here pretty soon, just go ahead and use event. Personally, we use event, so we're going to go ahead and use event and just run as event. And scroll down. These are the ones we've already used and looked at. But when you go down, here you go. This is the PHP options. Now, depending on what you want to run, how you want to configure PHP, you're obviously going to want GD. A lot of these options you're going to really want to select. Personally, I'm a fan of basically installing and selecting practically all of them. That way, like mcrypt, mstream, yeah, file info, get text. We want to install this one. I'm not going to bother going through and explain all these things, but I personally am a fan of installing just about all of them. This just gives the clients, everything that they need. This way you're not going to get emails, tickets, whatever, phone calls saying, "Can you enable this? Can you enable this? I need this. I need that now." And because it's a pain to later have to go back and compile and install PHP. It's just a pain to have to come back in and to reinstall, recompile. So, I'm just more of a fan of just enabling everything and not to deal with it later. I will talk about these two real quick. Safe mode. A lot of people under the assumption that safe mode means you can't get hacked, you're protected. No, safe mode has actually been depreciated and it's actually not been used and probably since the very, very early days of PHP 5, if that. Safe mode was an idea to automatically disable dangerous functions, which I used quotations there. Honestly, if you actually do permissions and configure and secure the server correctly, you're not going to have an issue with functions. In fact, we don't typically even disable functions because we don't see them as a threat. Even if you disable functions through PHP, there's so many other ways to be able to launch a code or an exploit attack on a server. So honestly, don't mess with safe mode. Just disable it. Don't deal with it. It's going to give you clients crap. It's going to give them problems with trying to install scripts. It's just a pain. It's dead anyway. They're getting rid of it. They're taking it out of PHP. It doesn't exist. Just don't touch it. Don't use it. It has nothing to do with making you safe. It just really isn't. So just don't bother with it. Safe PHP CGI, that's not a bad one, but once again, this is a business model decision. If you want your clients to be able to use their own PHP INI file, shut this off. If you don't want them to use a PHP INI file, enable this. This just basically is, we really don't have an issue with this because we know everything's locked down. So here we're not trying to disable stuff. The only reason why we typically would enable this is it gives us control on how PHP is configured and set up. It can help with debugging issues, so we don't have to worry about, them having because I've seen it with a bunch of PHP INI files just littered through their system. Like, it just becomes a nightmare. It's like then you don't know which PHP INI file is actually being used. So just for debugging purposes and because we don't disable anything and we keep things practically pretty safe, we just find it easier to not let them have that control. If they need that control, they can get a VPS from us or something. It's just in a shared environment, we want everything to run one certain way. We don't want things to be touched. We don't want them to have the ability in a nice way, I guess, to screw something up. And we have to actually go through and debug it. And so that's just why we prefer just to do that. It also gives you more control. But once again, this is a business model decision, how you want to actually configure your servers and how you want to run it. So, it really just comes down to that. So, it's just how you want to do it. Alright, so let me double check. I think we've got everything checked here. It just really depends what you want to do. But really, you may want to actually look into some of these things and actually figure out what they do if you want them. You can always click the more info and it brings up the manual at PHP or CPanel at times, and it just goes through and explains every little thing and all the different functions. So you can go through and, look them up if you want to. These are the options I was talking about if you want to actually create a profile or a template, whatever you like to call it. And then if you want to and then when you run through it, you can always have it choose, use the latest PHP, Apache, whatever. Sorry about that. We're just going to go ahead and call this PHP security 2. Save and build. Yes, I understand. So it's going to go ahead and start enabling other things. If you check something, it's going to enable something. So it right now should start building. There we go. This is the reason why I was talking about command line interface. If you have low memory and you're gonna be doing something big, you might want to do it for the command line interface, and all you do is you do scripts, easy Apache. All the cPanel stuff is installed under scripts, so you can take a look at that, because anything done in WHM and cPanel can be done through the command line interface. So right here, as you can tell, it is currently compiling and installing cPanel, not cPanel, Apache and PHP. So right now it's downloading and then running through the config system. So it's going to do Apache first, and then it's going to do PHP. So what we're going to do here real soon is we're going to go ahead and pause the video and wait till it's done, because this right here is like installing cPanel, depending on the processor and everything. It's going to take a very, very long time. It's going to take, I mean, it really doesn't matter. I mean, this is a very, very, very serious install. I mean, I've seen it take as much as an hour, even on a dedicated machine. The one thing I am going to also want to mention, because I know this is going to probably be asked, is can you do this on a live production box without interfering with sites? And the question is, yes, you can. You can compile and do a reconfigure with Easy Apache in the background. It will not shut Apache down. It will not interfere with websites running. So you won't have a problem with that. The only thing that would probably end up happening is once it's done on a production, it's going to copy over and install the config files. It's going to overwrite a lot of them. So if you don't do things like I said in the first video through WHM, you're going to find yourself with some configuration option issues, because it's going to reset files, and you might have some downtime with like maybe a 505, not 505, but like a 500, or trying to think about this one other error. I can't think of which one it was, but I've seen it happen where if you do something custom, it's going to complain because it wasn't done how it's supposed to have been done. So if you do this on a production box, make sure that you make note of anything you've done in the configuration files that was not done through WHM. Back up your settings and get ready to, when it's done, go through, reinsert them, and then restart Apache, and then you'll be good to go. But other than that, you can run this in the background and you won't have any problems. It won't take Apache down, it won't shut sites off or anything like that. All it's going to do is basically restart the service, install the new files. Same thing with Apache, PHP, same way. So you won't have any issues. You can do it. The only thing that I will say is do not do it during a heavy load, like when sites are going to be at the busiest, because it's going to add a lot of overhead with I/O, because it's going to be downloading, compiling. So it's going to add a little bit of load to the server depending on your hardware. So you might want to do it at night. This is why I said pretty much check everything. So if a client needs something, you don't have to do this and make them wait, however long you make them wait to get what they need. So I definitely am going to recommend just get it done once, and then every so often at night or whenever you want to do it, go ahead and make an update to install like the latest version of PHP or Apache, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this video and we will be back. Okay, so we're back. That actually finished a lot faster than I thought it was going to finish. But anyway, it finished, it completed correctly, as you can tell. When it's done, it's going to pop up this configured PHP box. It actually kind of broke because while it was doing this, I was logging in under another window. So we're just going to go ahead and close this. And we're going to go to this one. And service configuration, configure PHP. Alright, here we go. So this is what was going to pop up, except in a small box. And it gives you the options and the configured value and what it is and how to set it. So we have the different options of how we can run PHP 5. We do want to run as fast CGI. Now, if you would have had the other version of PHP and compiled and configured, you could select that. You can choose to have Apache and the default version for PHP. So you can have the options. Personally, I'm not really a fan of ever using this screen. The only time you probably would ever use this is when you originally configured PHP for the first time. Like we wanted to run as fast CGI, so we include this, save configuration, and let it go. Let it run. Keep running. Well, it should have finished here sometime soon. Well, while it does that, we'll go ahead and, okay, there we go. So, it ran, and here's the PHP file. This is one of the files I was talking about. When we modify it, we typically add a lot of options in here. Like, if you look up fast CGI, you can look at all the options and how to configure it. So we've got it configured a lot better than the default. But this is one of the files you want to keep an eye on how you do it, because it will get overwritten. So you want to make sure you go in and edit correctly with the rebuild PHP config file. So when it does rebuild, it puts stuff in correctly. We found that out like a long time ago the hard way, that this file is actually redone every time PHP was reconfigured. So okay, so let's go to this real quick and talk about using Easy Apache. So we'll just clear that. So if we look at scripts, okay, let's just cd scripts. I forgot that. So cd and scripts. As you can tell, these are all the many different scripts that CPanel uses. Now, let's just go ahead and do this just because grep easy. This should actually show it. Oops. Silly keyboard. Okay, ls grep easy. Okay, see, there's Easy Apache. So what you do is you just do scripts and Easy Apache. Okay, here we go. So this is Easy Apache in the client command line. Sorry about that, command line interface. So we want to use, you can select which one, but we want to use that one. So we're in a tab, start customizing, tab next. So it's pretty much the same thing, except you just tab to whichever one you want, and you can select it. So if we go here, details. So as you can tell, it's kind of like the exact same thing, except it's kind of like configuring the kernel in a sense, but it's not. So that's how you do it on the command line interface. So we're just Control C out of that. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. If you want to do it command line interface, it's not that complicated. It's pretty easy to do. So you can do it either way, but the main thing I want to also show about that is you can use any of these scripts. If you look up on the API and stuff, how they work, you can actually use them and create your own little scripts and do everything from the command line interface. This is very, very helpful if you use something like Puppet and you want to do everything from a central machine. And like if you have like over 100 or 1,000 machines and you want to do it all to all of them, you don't want to go through each one. Using the command line interface like that was really, really helpful. So I just wanted to show that out, that anything you do through WHM, you can in fact do through the command line interface. So if you're like us, you run a lot of boxes and you want to just do something from a central machine, plug in the values, hit command, whatever, and send it off, you can do that. So I just want to show that off. But that right there is pretty much Apache in a nutshell. Easy Apache is actually really nice. It's really come a long way. So that concludes this episode on using Easy Apache and working with PHP. So join us next time, and on the next video, don't forget to subscribe. You got questions, comments, whatever, hit us up on the forum. The community there, and we'll talk all about this video.